This meeting will come to order at 6:03. And Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Adams.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Cefaratti.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
Brownlee.
Here.
Trojanksi.
Here.
Agee.
Here.
Albers.
Here. The purpose of our meeting this evening is to review and pass, yea or nay, the ordinance 214-27. Mayor, are you aware of the finance director coming at any point this evening?
She is going to be here,
Okay.
yes. She's
Okay.
probably just running a few minutes late.
Okay, all right, thank you. We, would we be loving, please?
Ordinance number 2014-27, an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Maple Heights, State of Ohio for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2014, and declaring an emergency.
And this is a third reading this evening. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Madam President.
Go ahead.
We began to discuss last night some of the appropriations. I then sent an email out trying to compile my thoughts, sent to Ms. Kroll, and then a similar version to everyone else with the considerations that I had for the budget, most specifically for perhaps appropriations that are missing. And so I would like to give Ms. Kroll the opportunity to respond to those questions. Did you receive my email, Ms. Kroll?
I did late this afternoon. I had been in meetings most of the day, so when I received it, it was not really enough time to respond to it. If I had received it probably earlier in the process, I would have had more time, but in a couple hours, I didn't have time to respond to that.
So then, to the best of your ability, we'll see what your answers would be here tonight for, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 funds specifically. We began a discussion about funds 215 and 216 last night. I don't think we came to a conclusion on it though. You mentioned that you would, I believe what you were saying last night is that you transferred most of the expenses from those funds to the general fund. You've shifted those expenses to the general fund. And so all that's going to come out of the funds 215 and 16 this year will be whatever comes in from the property taxes. That amount will be appropriated for the pensions. Is that correct?
Let me restate that. There were no expenses. Okay, I'm working on the 2014 budget. So there are 0 expenses except for those that I put in. You're referencing 2013. I did not budget the same level of 2013. So if you consider that shifting, I only budgeted what the fund would cover in terms of revenue. So 2013 had some numbers that you're referencing that I did not use. I was looking at the revenue that was due in this year and budgeting the expenses accordingly.
There's no appropriations at all made from those two funds.
I understand that, sir, and as I explained back on Wednesday when we went through this, is that the special funds, which start with 201 on to the 700s, are designated or restricted funds, and for the most part, they're self-balancing. They really don't impact the general fund in terms of the revenue. The money comes in and the money goes out. So what we were focusing on was the general fund expenditures in terms of operational. Those are special funds, as I stated, from the state, from the property taxes to cover accrued liabilities for the OP&F. It has nothing to do with operations. Those funds are not for operations. They were set aside for that purpose. And that liability would take you probably to 2035 or sometime. If there's anything left, you may want to consider that, but the purpose was not for operations. It was the fire and police levy that were for operations, and if you look at those, 230 and 235, you will see operating funds. So we're basically going over what we went over the last couple of nights. There's nothing else I can add to that.
Well, my question then would be, Ms. Kroll, do we not have to appropriate from every fund? We have to, when we submit our budget, it's the appropriations for each individual fund. So if there's going to be expenses, like you mentioned there would be last night, in May and November, you mentioned there will be payments.
Those expenses will probably amount to about $40,000.
Okay, so we should put $40,000
You may
in.
if you wish, but it does not impact, like I say, in terms of the operations for the city, it does not impact the operations. We need to differentiate between operations and special funds.
We're not at the operation for special funds, we're at the budgeting process where it has to be done by fund. So we have to do all the appropriations for each fund.
Each fund will not have an appropriation. You would have appropriations if there's dollars in those funds that's coming in, and if we decide to appropriate. Some funds come in for multiple years, and they may not all go out at the same time. So it's not just A plus B equals C. It's not that cut and dry. What you're probably looking at
Doesn't sound like anything's cut and dry.
Well, all I'm saying, Mr. Brownlee, is that appropriations are made, should be made in accordance with what the revenue is coming in. And again, for the third night, I'll restate that the funds starting with 200 are special funds for special purposes that's usually designated by a grant or contract or otherwise. So those are taken into consideration, and you'll see that for those, you know, the revenue, if there's no revenue coming in, then there's no appropriations.
So then for 215 and 16, we should change it from 0 to 83,000 in accordance with your expected revenue.
That's not what I said.
That is what you said just a moment ago.
It is not. I said that money comes into those funds for special purposes. And they're not always going out at the same time. You'll get multi-grants and different funds, okay?
You explained to us last night, Ms. Kroll, that this, as you said, is something, some kind of compensation for pensions that's going to last through 2030, sometime like that. And that this money is coming to help offset the cost of the pensions.
Correct.
Right? So this money is going to have to be appropriated to those pensions, the purpose for which we're receiving these funds. So that $83,000 is going to be spent this year.
I didn't say it was 83,000. I think I said it was about 47,000.
You said right here that on you're expecting 83,000 from the.
That's the revenue. But you asked me about the appropriation. I'm saying that 83,000 does not have to be appropriated.
So what should we appropriate to cover that cost?
$40,000
a piece.
No, I didn't say that. It's for the, I think it's for the fire. I'll look it up to see, but only one of the funds. But the point is, what is your point?
My point is that we should be making the appropriations commensurate with the expenses we expect to incur this year.
Right, and they may vary. That's what I'm saying, that they're not cut and dry. We'll get a bill from them in May, and they'll tell us how much. And what I said to you, that I did not have the opportunity to see the bill, so there was nothing placed there. The bill will change each time you receive it, but it will not exceed the appropriation, the revenue, the resources, and there will be no more spent out of that fund than what's been appropriated, than what we received.
So according to our form from the County Budget Commission, we will be receiving, it says 73,000 from the property taxes. I think it was a 0.2 mil levy for each of those, something like that.
It's on the estimated resource that I gave to you on Wednesday night?
Yeah, it's right here,
Okay.
73,000.
Okay, it did not change.
So that money is coming in for a particular purpose, just like a grant probably. It's going to be spent this year for that particular purpose. They're not giving it to us to just hold on to, I don't think.
Well, we're not going to, what do you want to do?
So I want to know how much we need to appropriate
And I
from
said
funds
about
215.
$40,000.
Why is it not 73,000 then?
like I said, they give it to you based on your revenue, based on a percent. They don't pay the bill. Just like the property taxes, they prorate it, they calculate it on how much we receive. Now, how we spend it or whether it covers all of our bills is not the point. This is what they give us, okay? And that will be determined at the property tax collection time. And this is what they estimate on that estimated resource, which I gave to you.
Yes, ma'am. So then, Fund 410. Fund 410, that's capital improvement. We have estimated $500,000 coming in from grants for capital improvements. Yet we have zero as far as appropriations from that fund.
And I just explained that it's the same thing, that those are special funds. As we get the money in, is that those dollars will not be exceeded, okay?
Will we be spending that $500,000 this year?
I do not know, it depends on.
We don't have a project that we are planning to spend those monies on?
We may, when I meet with the engineer, I mean, they change from time to time. The infrastructure programs, the roads and all of those, they change. So I cannot sit here right now and tell you what those projects would be.
Mr. Mayor, do we plan to spend that $500,000 in grants that come in?
Well, we're going to spend $150,000 of it on the resurfacing of Applegate, Milan Drive, and I believe it's Fairway. We have some pending grant applications for some other projects. Libby Road's in there, Lee Road, the concrete repairs. We haven't received final documents, notification. I mean, verbally we have at some point, and that will probably be very late in the year, which is why you're not seeing. Money hasn't come in yet, so it's not appropriated yet.
So
but
then
it
we
will
should take
be
it out of our revenue? We should remove that from our revenue then, if we don't know we're going to get that money.
No, it's grant money. It's like,
also, it is coming.
It is just so far, the 150 grand for sure. The other money has not been sent yet. They have notified us informally, if you may, that yes, they are going to be in for Libby Road. And yes, they will give us the funds for the Lee Road concrete work. But as I just said, that will be much later this fall.
So whenever we submitted to the county our estimate of resources, they obviously found some credence to the $500,000 because they put it on their estimate here. So what was submitted to them to show them that this is actually coming in this year?
There may be some money left from last year's block grant program that we resurfaced some streets that they, in fact, I think there is an outstanding bill. Not sure the total amount yet with retainer, but I know we're still paying off the Broadway resurfacing and the Broadway sewer. Again, there could be multiple projects. I don't know why, you need to know exactly, precisely what they are.
Because it's throwing off our numbers, because we have here listed a $500,000 revenue,
right,
which adds into our $19 million total revenue.
Right.
Yet we don't know if we're going to get it.
No, we're going to get it. We're going to get it. We're going to get it. I just said that.
So if we get it, we're going to spend it. So
yes,
we should put $500,000 in our expenditures then.
You don't want to do it now because the money isn't in the bank yet.
This is a budget.
Do you understand how that works?
This is a budget. It's called forecasting.
No, it isn't. When you're dealing with the state and the county and OPWC, it's not exact. It's not budgeted.
I'm talking about exact.
Well, that's what you're saying. If the money isn't here, then why are we budgeting for it?
What I want to know, is it zero? Is it 150? Or is it 500,000? Those aren't exact numbers.
When the money comes in, then it will change, as we've said for the last 2 nights. When you come back here again in May and later on in the year, you're going to be amending these numbers. And sometimes you don't even have to amend them. You came to council meetings for over a year. We've done it on the floor through legislation at council meetings, where we have made budget line item transfers. There's much more than just what you're trying to say right here. You have to open yourself up to the entire experience.
Okay, so that's 410. Now, if we move down to 729, the healthcare fund, we have listed on your expected revenue, Ms. Kroll, $188,000. We have nothing appropriated from there. This $188,000, it appears to be deductions, payments from our employees, if I have that correct. So what's going to happen to those funds throughout the year?
Those funds really are offset to the general fund. It helps pay the health care premium. So when we receive the bill is consisting of two parts. One is the employer, one is the employee. This is the employee section. Okay? And technically, this money will go back to the city.
How will it come back to the city?
Well, it's already here. When we get paid every pay, the money is deducted out of our checks.
Then how come we have had expenses from this account for the past 5 years?
I can't answer that. Like as I said, I made a statement that I do not have an accounting of the records for the prior years.
It's funny that I have one, and I'm not the finance director.
It's not funny.
I'm sad, actually, you're right.
Okay.
So, we spent in 729 over the past 6 years an average of more than $100,000 from that fund. Yet we have zero listed on this budget. Why is that?
Because it's not an expenditure. We're getting back to accrual accounting.
It says expenditure right here, Ms. Kroll.
It says it
other
where?
expenditure. It says fringe benefits. That was what it was expensed to. So, why are we appropriating nothing this year?
Because it's not an appropriation.
Interesting. Well, then let's look at last year's appropriations and see what an appropriation looks like from this fund.
Well, that's assuming that those records are accurate.
Oh, this is the ordinance from the City Council office.
Until they have been audited, okay?
I'm talking about the appropriations.
Okay, we're looking at audited
If
statements.
we look at the appropriations from 2013, the final appropriations for Fund 729 was $164,000. So again, I ask, why do we have zero listed here?
We have zero listed because those are not appropriations, those are pass-through dollars. They're being held as custodial funds.
Then how come,
I can't answer for 2013. I did not prepare that.
how about for 2012, 2011, 2010, 2009, 2008?
I cannot answer for those. If you go back and look at
So
your
it's
audits.
not an expenditure. It hasn't been an expenditure for those 6 years.
No, it's not an expenditure.
What has it been then?
I mean, she just said it's
You
a
have to ask the
custodial
auditors.
fund.
Then how come it says expenses right here? Where were
Is
they
that what
paid
the audit
to?
says? If you're not looking at an audit.
Are you looking at an audit?
If you're not.
We're
looking
making
at
the
an
best
audit-
guess we can right now. We're not blaming the auditors for taking forever to do an audit. We're trying to make the best guess that we can right
And
now.
that's
We're not
what
trying
I
to
did.
shift blame.
I did
I would
that
like to
for
know.
20.
Mr. Brownlee,
Why?
Mr. Brownlee, I'm going to have to ask you to calm down just a little bit. This is turning into an interrogation of our finance director, number one. We are here to pass an ordinance, please.
We are
We
here
will
to
be getting, excuse
create
me,
a crafted budget.
excuse me, we're not crafting a budget at this point in time because it's such a movable thing. And we are still waiting for the state audit, as we've repeated over and over again. But I think the cross-examination that you're really being intent on to get answers to questions, and I think that's a great thing. I think that's a great thing. However, our first order of business tonight is to pass our budgets, or not our budgets, but our appropriations, so that we can get it down in time. That's first.
We're trying to get a
Second-
real budget is the point here. We're trying to get a real, see,
But
because
that's not the point. We need to do the appropriations. Okay?
here's where
And
we
the
are, Madam President.
appropriations are not the budget that you are alluding to.
May I point you to this?
No, you may not.
This sheet here?
No, you may not. Please, I'm going to ask you to, we can do a special meeting. Irene has said that we will go over line by line to show how we are are dealing with the budget, I think that would be an appropriate time.
This is what we're supposed to be doing right now, as far as
Right
I'm
now, we are
concerned.
going over the appropriations. It's the appropriations.
Exactly.
You are talking about the whole budget process, which is two different things at this point in time. You don't agree?
You're mistaken.
I probably am. But the point is to take these appropriations and send them down so that we can get started.
The point is to send down appropriations that are accurate.
And you don't agree that these are accurate?
From my questions here tonight, I think it's very obvious that I think we need to make some adjustments. And I'm trying to get the answers to questions so we can know what adjustments exactly need to be made. Because these appropriations are not at all in line, even considering how Ms. Kroll is cleaning up the books and shifting the expenses from the special funds to the general fund, which I think is a great idea. But even in light of that, I'm very concerned that these are not realistic, and that if we don't address these as soon as possible, that then we'll be even worse off as the year continues.
I'm going to ask our finance chairperson, you had a conversation with our finance director, and is this your view as well?
In terms of what Mr. Brownlee is saying, no, I mean, I disagree. I mean, I go by the numbers that the finance director is projecting for the city's fiscal 2014 budget appropriations. I mean, the appropriations are simply forecast numbers of what the city needs by department to operate for the year. The numbers are going to change from day to day. It's not exact ABC, this is what it's going to be this day, that day. It's not like that at all. And if you've watched, like we've done last year, we've made amendments and so forth to funds and whatnot. So, I mean, I understand you want an exact figure, but it's not going to be like that. We're making appropriations to fund the city. And like the finance director has said before, after we've passed appropriations so that the city can operate, we can make amendments as a council. I mean, the council does not create a budget, it is the finance director. We simply make the appropriations and give the approval. It is up to the directors and to the mayor and to the finance director to do the rest. I understand that you want checks and balances and accountability, but all these exact figures and so forth, and compare 2014 or 2013 was 2013. This is 2014. We're making appropriations to run the government for 2014. There is a carryover from the deficit and so forth, but we're focusing on 2014.
So you don't think we should ask anything about 2013?
Oh, I mean, I think there's nothing questions. We're focusing on 2014.
Every question I ask.
Would you please ask to be recognized before you speak?
Okay.
Thank you. Are you finished, Richard? Okay. Anyone else, please? Tony?
Through you to the finance director, is this a safe assumption statement that we need, and I don't know if this would clarify anything, that we need to make appropriations in order to form a budget? So we have to actually put money into these line items, and then they're tweaked into what you would call the line item budgets.
I'm even not clear on your statement, but if I may try. We're doing a budget for this year. And from last year, yes, those are questions that you can ask. But because we raised so much money last year, does not mean that we're going to have that same amount this year. So this year, we're looking at what we're expecting and appropriating accordingly. We cannot appropriate based on last year's revenue or last year's appropriations. I mean, I don't know if that answers your question, but yes, historical data is good, is always relevant, but it's relevant in terms of looking back at the prior year. But when it comes to actually setting appropriations for this year, you have to look at this year and only this year's resources. I cannot look at what came in last year for property taxes or city taxes. Those numbers has no relevance in terms of what we will appropriate in 2014. What we will appropriate in 2014 are the dollars that will come in for 2014. Yes, it's good to know that, say, oh, we're getting $1 million less. Okay, that's fine, that's information. But in terms of the process, we cannot budget or appropriate based on the fact that we have $1 million less from last year. Last year was last year, and the reason I'm answering the questions the way I do is because, first of all, 2013 is not really on the books. It's not on the books until the auditors put it on the books. So to sit here and give out numbers that could be false, I mean, in terms of what we see, these printouts that councilmen are looking at, these are printouts that's generated by staff. And you've heard the term, and I'm not picking anyone on the bus, but you've heard the term when computers came out, garbage in, garbage out. I could go back and make a journal entry and change all those numbers that he's doing. But when the auditors come, they will be the one to say that was not appropriate and we're changing that number. So I'm not going to sit here and try to defend or explain 2013 numbers. We all know that there were some questions about 2013, mainly because it basically reflected maybe 3.5 quarters of the year. Because beginning of this year, when I came in the end of January, we had bills, you know, that pertain some to 2013. So they're mingled. So for me to sit here, I will not do the analysis. I won't do it. I'm just being honest, because the auditors will do that, and it's only their numbers that will count. I talked with them again today. They're still compiling numbers. And when the fiscal team come back with their analysis, regardless of what those statements that Mr. Brownlee's reading from, regardless of what I give you, or regardless of what the paper says, those are the numbers that will be on our record. So I think it's a moot issue to sit here and say, well, in 2013, we budgeted this number. Well, maybe we had more income. Maybe we had less. But the income and expenses should be congruent, and they should be commensurate with each other. So I'm not budgeting off 2013 revenue or whatever they spent. So, you know, I mean, I can appreciate your concern, and it is something that we all will find out eventually. But tonight, we're not going to find that out, and I don't feel that I need to sit here and try to defend or budget it, say, if we budgeted this much in 2013, why aren't we budgeting this amount in 2014? The issue is, we're looking at this vertical. We're looking at revenue, expenses. We're not looking at horizontal. 2013, 2014, why? So, you know, in this instance, we're doing a vertical review. We're looking at what we're getting in this year or projecting. And that could even change tomorrow. We've had this discussion in the last 2 nights. Property taxes on here are what the county sent, and they say use this number in the budget. I did not compute it. I did not try to calculate it. It's given in a written statement from the county to say, use this number for police levy, use this amount for street lighting, and so on and so forth. Based on those numbers, they're in here along with our other revenues from RETA, building permits, and any other revenue received. And based on my fair estimate, which is not the absolute, because as we said, things would change. I mean, you have staffing changes. As that happens, it's going to change the complexion of this budget, and it's going to keep moving. This is a very fluid document, and it's not going to be, this is it tonight, everything is going to be perfect. It's not. So that's the best that I can say, and I really don't have anything else to offer.
Thank you. I think that we'll have an ample opportunity when the state comes in, and we will have additional meetings. So if we could possibly table all of those concerns, stack them up, write them out, and table all of those concerns. And I would really like to move.
Madam President, I have a
No, I'm sorry,
question.
Mr. Brownlee. I think we had
Then I
more
will
than
have to
enough
appeal
time.
your decision.
No, Mr. Brownlee.
According to the
There are
charter,
other folks who
you
might
can
like
appeal
to.
a decision. You're going to close debate, if that's what it sounds like.
No, I'm not going to close debate. I'm I'm going to ask you to step back so other people might be able to voice an opinion, if there's anyone else that would like to speak.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Jackson?
a couple of questions. One, and Ms. Crowell might have answered one of them for me, and that was, again, I sent an email and asked about the state audit. And I guess you said you haven't received anything yet.
No, they're still working on it.
Is there a time frame that the state has to have that audit back to us by law? I mean, it's like our budget has to be done by the 31st. Is there a time frame that the state is supposed to get that audit back to us?
Okay, let me just,
Go ahead.
Let me just clarify. Okay, the state is not doing an audit. There's a fiscal team from the state auditor is reviewing the records based on the fact that there's some challenges and issues with where we stand. Okay, that's a review, which is sort of different from an audit. The audit, we'll have a gap audit, which has to be completed by May 30th. That's a gap audit, which will go through and, convert our cash basis to the accrual basis. But in terms of what the state is doing, there's no timeline. They would take as long as they need to get all the information. And like I say, it's still happening. I received calls today. Could you please send me this? Could you send me that from 2013? And so on and so forth, because they're compiling the numbers. They don't just accept the numbers in these printouts as gospel. They have to prove it for themselves. And it's not to say they're incorrect. It's just that they have their own source documents. And the source documents are the bank statements that come in. And from that, they can tell everything. It's the payroll records. And from those records, they compile what the expenses were, what the receipts were, and they may or may not be the same as on those financial statements that Mr. Brownlee is using in his analysis. Those are statements that's inputted by us, the humans, and so, you can put in what you want. Of course, I'm hoping, and I'm not saying that we do, but that's why they're not considered the source document for financial analysis. It's always good if they do balance and reflect accurate information, and that's why you have audit. They audit those statements. That's why they're called annual financial audits. When they audit those, they determine if what they have, what we gave them is accurate or not, or make adjustment. And it's not always just incompetence, it's just that there's errors or different ways that they interpret and separate the 2 years. They'll separate 13. Whatever we did in 13 and 14 that pertains to 13, they would separate it and push you back to those statements. Those statements won't reflect that. If there were some prepaid expenses that came in, that we may have paid, say like an insurance, you may pay it from July 1st to June. They would split it out and put, appropriate it in the proper year. But on a cash basis, when we pay it, the whole amount will show up in those statements, because it's a cash transaction. So that's why I say it's not as simple as sitting here to say that this is the gospel or this is accurate. It's not that it's not accurate, it just may not be complete or have all the information or designated to the proper periods where the activity occurred. So that's why I'm just saying I think it's a moot issue to use those as documents at this point, because the one thing I do know when I came in, that there were some 2013 activity that would show up in the 2014 records if I gave them to you. It's cash. If I wrote a check today, the checkbook doesn't say that it's for last year in terms of the bank statement. The bank statement will put the entire check on the bank statement. The bank doesn't say, well, part of this check was from last year, part was this year, and they won't go back and put a part on December statements. That's what the auditors do, and we need to let them do their work. And I think at that time, we should have a very spirited meeting, because I'm waiting for it also. I was hoping that by now. But from my experience, because I've had this experience, it was about 6 months before they actually came back to say, this is our finding. So,
thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yes, to a degree, yeah.
Okay, I think we're ready to move, and I would appreciate a motion to pass the...
Madam Chair, I have more discussion.
Pardon me?
I have more discussion on this.
I'm sorry, I think we're ready to move. I'm
Then I
sorry.
will appeal your decision.
You go ahead and appeal the decision. I think we're ready to move. May I have a motion, please?
It's time to appeal your decision. According to the administrative code, now when someone appeals the decision of the chair, the person who appeals shares their view of it, the chair shares their view of it, and then it's brought to a vote before the body. And the chair
May I have a
asks-
motion to pass the ordinance number 2014-27?
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Point of order.
Point of order, Madam Chair. This is what parliamentary procedure is about.
May I have a
Orderly
motion,
conduct.
please?
Madam Chair.
May I have a second?
No, Madam Chair. There was another question that was asked to the mayor concerning this vote that I'd like to get answered before we vote. Yes.
There's a motion, there's,
Oh, you didn't? Oh, I didn't see it. Madam Chair, could you share that information with us?
I'm sorry, can you do this afterwards? Is this pertinent?
If we have to vote, yes, it is.
I'm sorry, what is it? What is
I
it?
don't know what you're talking about.
I don't either. I don't
I
either.
did answer your
That's what
email.
I'm saying, you did.
Okay. Okay,
That's
Did-
the question he asked.
but you didn't share it with him? With,
Well, I CC'd everybody. I mean, when I asked you the question, when
Yeah.
you send it back, did you,
well, I think what happened was I got 3 of the same email from you.
okay, I was doing it from work on my
Yeah,
phone.
and
so-
it said 2 of them came from the phone, so I thought
Was that
maybe,
the
you know,
cuts you were
something
talking?
bumped or a button stuck or something, so that's why I did respond, but I didn't know.
Okay,
It was supposed to go to everybody else?
yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, the question was basically what happens if the
Right.
budget doesn't pass?
Right.
Okay, then the answer is then we shut down because we don't have any money appropriated for anything, and that means nobody gets paid, no vendors get paid, no employees get paid, no bonds, no notes get paid, everything just stops. We close everything.
That's as of April 1st.
Yeah, we'll just, you know, who's gonna show up and work for free? Nobody. Who, you know, all the vendors are gonna want their money and we're not gonna pay them, so they're not gonna supply us with fuel and gasoline and asphalt and concrete and all of that.
Madam Chair.
We're done.
Mr. Mayor, then how come whenever we overspent our appropriations last year in certain funds, that didn't seem to stop us?
Because we still paid our bills.
Okay, so we would still pay our bills.
Last year we did because we had a budget with
Yeah,
items that were
when we
approved, and if
overspent
we went
it,
over them, we still
didn't have
paid them, we
appropriations
transferred
for it.
money. But we, by law, have to have this
Uh-huh.
downtown on Monday so
And-
that we can continue. And if we go over, we go over. We'll transfer from another fund, we'll come before council like we always do and say, here's an ordinance for a line item transfer to take money from this fund to put it in this fund so this person can get paid.
You mentioned by law. By law, we also aren't allowed to over appropriate from any single fund, which we have done in the general fund. We've over appropriated by roughly $1.5 million according to the certificate of estimated resources. So we're talking about by law, we're about to break that law if we pass this budget right now.
Did you figure that one out all by yourself? Because we've done that for the last, like, 3 or 4 years.
I thought the law was important to you, Mr. Mayor.
It is,
You quoted
it is, but working with the state of Ohio, who should have been in here 2, 3, 4 years ago and put us in watch, warning, and emergency a long time ago, which they didn't, because, you know, we're not the only city that's going through this. Garfield Heights is, East Cleveland is, Euclid is, Newburgh Heights is. They're not just auditing Maple Heights. We're not the only city with this problem. And there's only so many people in the auditor's office, so when their full attention is in a city, mostly from what I've been reading, is in East Cleveland, they're going to be real thin in other areas. So that buys us more time to do things like we did with the health insurance last night, to pass that legislation, which will save us money. Or when there were firefighters laid off, or other employees, secretaries and inspectors laid off, that buys us more time so we can keep meeting payroll, paying bills, and keeping the city moving.
Madam Chair, I move to stop debate.
Then we move to call question, I think.
I second. We need a second, please.
So the motion is for Ron and Alex to stop the debate.
Yes, please.
Call the question.
Call the roll.
Call the roll, please.
Jones?
We're voting to suspend this conversation, this debate.
Yes.
Cefaratti?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Brownlee?
No.
Trojanski?
Yes.
Agee?
Yes.
Adams?
And may I have a motion for ordinance number 2014-27
For adoption.
for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Jones?
Yes.
Cefaratti?
No.
Jackson?
Yes.
Brownlee?
No.
Trojanski?
Yes.
Agee?
No.
Adams?
Yes.
Oh, passed by 4 yes, 0 no, simple majority, third reading. Ordinance passed.
That was 3 no, not 0.
4-3. I'm sorry. 4 yes, 3 no. You guys get me all excited.
The meeting is adjourned at 6:45. Thank you for your patience and attendance.